Hi everyone, I'm Portia Bennett, founder of Notary Zeal Incorporated, where we specialize in global document preparation and expat concierge services. Today I want to share a real-life client story that illustrates perfectly how changes at the Kentucky Secretary of State's office can impact anyone sending important U.S. documents abroad, especially to non-Hague countries like Egypt. This case involves a birth certificate, a brand new Kentucky policy, and an important reminder that even small wording on a government certificate can create big consequences. The Hague Apostille Convention of 1961 is an international treaty that simplifies how official documents are recognized between countries. When a country joins the Hague Convention, it agrees to accept a single extra certification called an apostille on public documents, such as birth certificates, marriage certificates, notarized papers, court orders, etc. This apostille proves the signature and seal are genuine, so no embassy or consulate needs to add more stamps. Think of the apostille as an international notary of the notary. Once it's on the document, all other member countries automatically trust it. You can also view it as a passport for your documents. What happens in non-Hague countries? Countries not in the Hague Convention, like Egypt, the UAE, China, or most of the Middle East and parts of Africa, do not accept apostilles alone. For those countries, the document must be authenticated at the state level. Example, Kentucky Secretary of State, then authenticated at the U.S. Department of State in Washington, D.C. Finally, it must be legalized by the foreign country's embassy or consulate. Without those extra layers, the document can be rejected or even delayed. Let's clarify the difference. Hague member country, examples, Australia, Spain, Portugal, they only need an apostille. Non-Hague countries, such as Egypt, the UAE, China, needs an authentication plus U.S. Department of State and embassy legalization. Why it matters. Correctly identifying whether the destination country is Hague or non-Hague determines the entire process and your timeline. If you think it's a Hague but it's not, you stop at an apostille, your document is rejected abroad. If you think it's non-Hague, but it is, you waste time and money doing extra authentications. For example, Spain or Portugal, both Hague, need a state or federal apostille as their final step. Egypt, non-Hague, needs an apostille alone will not work, and you must add a U.S. Department of State authentication plus embassy legalization. Now let's talk about a major policy change that has caught many people by surprise. And it started right here in the Commonwealth of Kentucky. Until recently, Kentucky operated like most U.S. states. If your document was headed to a Hague Convention country, the Secretary of State issued you an apostille. If your document was headed to a non-Hague country, they issued a separate certificate of authentication to begin the multi-step legalization process. But Kentucky quietly changed that system. The Secretary of State's office now issues one single certificate for all international documents. Whether your document is destined for a Hague or non-Hague country, you receive the same certificate. Here's where it gets tricky. The top of the certificate still says apostille, which can be confusing for documents going to a non-Hague country like Egypt, China, or the UAE. The key is in the fine print at the bottom, where Kentucky explains that if the document is issued in a non-Hague country, further authentication, including U.S. Department of State verification and foreign embassy legalization, may be required. This single certificate approach is unique. It's meant to simplify the process on Kentucky's end, but it has created confusion for applicants and even for some consulates. Today, I'm going to show you a real example from a client who sent his birth certificate to Kentucky for use in Egypt and was surprised to receive a certificate labeled Apostille, even though Egypt is not a Hague country. We'll break down exactly how to interpret this new document and what steps are still required so that your paperwork isn't rejected overseas. Let me explain it in more simple terms. Before, two types of certificates. Apostille, you're going to a Hague. Authentication, Non-Hague. Now, one single certificate that covers both, but the top still says Apostille. This might seem like just a design choice, but as you'll see, those words at the top and bottom of the page have serious legal meaning. Now I'm going to touch base on my client's story, while also protecting his anonymity. Let's look at the bolded statement at the bottom. This certificate does not constitute an apostille under the Hague Convention of October 5th, 1961. When it is presented in a country that is not party to the convention, in such cases, further authentication may be required, including by the U.S. Department of State's Office of Authentications and the embassy of the country in which the document is being presented. This line is critical. It is Kentucky's way of saying, we're giving you one certificate for everything, but if it's going to a non-Hague country, you still need to do more. And as you can see, right there, it's bolded. Now let's break down the certificate. I'm going to walk you through the top versus bottom of the certificate. The top clearly states apostille, which is confusing for Egypt consulate or government. Bottom, instructions for non-Hague use. Why Kentucky residents sending documents to a non-Hague country? This single certificate is legally an authentication, but Egyptian authorities will almost always require a U.S. Department of State, Washington, D.C. authentication, Egyptian embassy legalization as well. So let's talk next steps for anyone going through this. The correct process for a Kentucky birth certificate going to Egypt. Kentucky single certificate apostille authentication. Then you need a U.S. Department of State authentication in Washington, D.C. Then you need to go to the Egyptian embassy to get a further legalization. Please always check the wording on any state-issued certificate and asking the receiving embassy for their exact requirements. Let's go over key takeaways from this talk. Always read every line on state-issued certificates. Never assume apostille at the top is the final step for non-Hague countries. Plan ahead. These steps can add weeks to your timeline. Start document prep early, ideally 6 to 12 months before a move or a visa application. If you are in Kentucky or any U.S. state and planning to move, marry, or work in a non-Hague country like Egypt, reach out to a professional before sending your documents. At Notary Zeal Incorporated, we specialize in helping clients avoid delays and rejections by handling everything from state authentication to federal and embassy legalization. I invite you all to book a consultation, join my Global Docs virtual workshop this October, as well as subscribe to my YouTube channel for weekly expat document tips. Thank you for watching. I am Portia Bennett, the CEO of Notary Zeal Incorporated and your global document concierge. Enjoy the rest of your week. Bye-bye.